Good afternoon, this is Ungagged with Graham and Janis. I'm Janis, co-convenor of SNP Socialists, and
I'm Graham
is my co-convenor.
Lovely to co-convene with you. It's been another quiet week in politics.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think we should talk about?
Nothing's happened at all. Nothing to see here. End the podcast now.
Yeah. So, an election
first.
in what, 6 weeks? 5 weeks? 6 weeks? A lot of notice.
I have to say I'm a bit surprised.
I am very surprised. I thought they would have kept it going on as painfully and as long as possible. But I think they must have just realised that there's no point in delaying the inevitable. So general election it is. Yeah, a lot of hard work.
During the middle of the Scottish school holidays, huh?
Yep.
Right at the beginning when people are going away, thinking about going away, or if they're in football fans and they're following their team in England colours. So obviously this is designed to time with them. But interestingly, he's not timed it until after the final because he's obviously realised that England won't get to the final. So he reckons all the fans will be back home by then to vote for him. But it's a very cynical ploy to benefit from a sort of feel-good factor. But I think it's been delayed from autumn simply because of the economics. It's because he can't cut taxes in the autumn. The budget and the Treasury statements are saying that. So because he can't cut taxes, he can't give the sweeties away and make people feel good in the autumn. So he's going now before it gets even worse for them. So it's really about damage limitation. But from our side of it, I suppose we know Keir Starmer's going to win the election. However, he doesn't need Scotland to win it. And Scotland has its own interests. And very clearly, he's not offering much change for us.
He's not offering much change at all. He's backtracked on all of his 10 promises that he was elected as leader on. He's going to continue austerity, continue Brexit. It's just going to be the same inhumane policies, but with a red rosette. And I mentioned last week, I don't understand why anyone in Scotland, even the hard-nosed unionists, would accept a continuation of the same. I don't understand it when there's an option for something so much different, so much better. But there you go.
Well, they're not offering much in the way of reform of Westminster either, because he wants to keep all those dictatorial powers that prime ministers have, but he doesn't want to do anything with them to actually change anything fundamentally. He's not abolishing the House of Lords, he's not even curbing their power. He'll probably, put hundreds of his colleagues into that chamber, which Labour promised to abolish years ago. It's going to carry on with that dysfunctional Westminster system and their dysfunctional economic policies, because they're going to stick to the Tory spending plans for 2 years, keep the benefit cap, probably not repeal that Rwanda bill, even though Rwanda's not going to happen now, because nobody's going to be sent there. But all those poor folks who've received notices of warnings to remove, or indeed who've been detained and arrested from dawn raids, all those folks, what's going to happen to them? Are they being released? That I'm not clear about, actually, whether that law falls.
Did he mention what he would do about the prison ship down in Plymouth, wherever it is that it docked down south somewhere? Is he going to continue with keeping asylum seekers locked up in a prison, a floating prison? I don't recall hearing.
I don't recall any either. But if he's following the guru Tony Blair's sort of politics on this, Tony Blair introduced a lot of these restrictions and the dawn raids policies and all of that. I suspect he'll keep every single one of them. And I hope that people will reflect on that, because I know that even Labour people up here in Scotland do not support those measures. But Scotland needs to have control over its migration. It needs more devolution of taxes and revenues, all the things that we should be controlling in Scotland. He's not offering any great devolution package either. So all these times people complain that the Scottish government can't do this, the Scottish Parliament can't do that. Well, give it the powers to do those things. If we can control our own migration policy, then we can actually grow the population. Interestingly, the census results just came through, the 2022 census, and it shows our population rising a little bit, up to, I think, by about 170,000, and it's almost entirely because of migration, both from within the rest of the UK and from abroad. Very low birth rate numbers. Our population is aging. Good chunk of the increase in the younger age population, people under 30, is from migration as well. So without that migration, our population stats would be even older and even worse. We've got older people are now 1 million in the population. So that's category. So it's good that we're living a long time. But the question is, what kind of quality of life do we have? And does the country have the full powers of independence to do anything about these things? These are all things that should matter in a Westminster general election. They're not marginal issues, because Scotland is clearly not equal partners in this union.
No.
The unionist parties will take any back step in the SNP's fortunes as a back step for the sake of independence. So I'm really keen that we emphasize that strongly. But I don't know what you think, though. But what do you think about just right as we're speaking, actually, just now, the John Swinney, the leader, is actually holding a campaign launch, I believe, in Edinburgh. So I didn't get that invite, but we'll be interested to see what platform he stands the party on. But given how FMQs went today, I can see this is going to be a horrible election campaign in Scotland.
It's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be pleasant. I think, here in East Lothian, we've got Douglas Alexander standing. We've also got George Kerrivan standing for Alba, and our MP is Kenny McCaskill. So we will fight it as hard as we can. But Labour, and this is the thing about Scottish Labour, they will run this campaign as if it's a Scottish Labour campaign. So they will promise things that are at odds with UK Labour, just so people vote Labour. For example, they were talking about stopping the 2-child cap. They don't have the power to do that. Keir Starmer hasn't mentioned anything about stopping that, but they're going about, especially here, kind of saying these things that cannot happen because it's not up to them. It's up to the UK party. So we're going to have a lot of that, I think, in Scotland. A lot of this kind of misinformation, just telling people what they need people to hear. And we'll also have a lot of tactical voting.
Yeah, clearly,
I think more so
both
than
sides
at
are going
any
to run.
stage. Yeah.
I was going to say both Tories and Labour are going to run as opposition parties in Scotland, which they are, but they're contenders for the governing party in the UK, and because they're going to pledge to do pretty much the same thing, they're not the candidates of change. I think Ginger Doug did a really good column in the National today, and apparently he's doing a daily column during the election campaign, so it should be interesting to hear his perspective. But I think he got it spot on in saying that, well, clearly, if you want independence, then clearly you have to vote SNP, because otherwise your MP is going to be a unionist, whether it's Labour or Tory. But it's actually the SNP that are the main opposition to the Tories and to Labour in most seats in the country. You have to obviously keep the momentum behind it, and also to give expression to that 54% majority that wants the sort of believe in Scotland style well-being economy. And that's where I want to sort of move our discussion to, because I hope that while John is speaking today, that we get some mention of the well-being economy, the kind of country Scotland could be and should be, with full balance of independence and taxation and control of the economy that we could become.
I think as well, a few people have mentioned this, there are 2 years until the Scottish elections. So regardless of how we do on the 4th of July, I think it'll be interesting to see if Keir Starmer can live up to his promise of making life better in those 2 years, because I think a lot of people in Scotland would want to give him a chance. Because aside, taking away the Gaza and his stance on the genocide, which matters a lot to us, but to many people I've spoken to, it's not up there with their concerns, which is alien to me, but that's just the way it is. And I think a lot of people will want to see if his premiership will make a difference to their lives. And I can't see it making a difference. I hope it makes a difference in some regard. But the next 2 years will be very interesting to see how things sway in terms of, the lead up to the Scottish elections, which I believe will be a de facto independence referendum if we win the majority of seats. Or I think regardless if we win the majority of seats, I think that's going to be an interesting litmus test of how well Labour can deliver on what they believe they can deliver on.
I think one of the interesting conundrums in this Westminster general election is, in fact, who's going to be standing as independent candidates, and how well the Greens will do in England and other parties. But interestingly, Jeremy Corbyn, of course, has just announced he's going independent, and he's a Labour member, but he's not a member, hasn't got the Labour whip. So, of course, as soon as he puts his papers in, he is going to be expelled from the Labour Party. But he's obviously, I know, because from Islington North, I know he will win handsomely. I don't know if Diane Abbott is in the same boat, but if those characters, people like them with decades of struggle and solidarity behind them in the Labour Party, are not able to be in the Labour Party, but somebody like Natalie Elphicke, a racist, xenophobic Brexiteer, can be in the Labour Party. That tells you all you need to know about Keir Starmer's changed Labour Party.
And I think a seat to watch for me, and I don't think Andrew Feinstein's going to win this by any stretch, because Starmer's got a huge majority, but I'm following him with interest. He's a very, very interesting character. He served under the Nelson Mandela leadership in South Africa. He has fought for Palestinian rights for most of his life. His parents are Holocaust survivors. They were in Auschwitz. Most of his family were exterminated in the Holocaust. And Camden's a very left-wing progressive part of London. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much he reduces Starmer's majority by, or if he can actually pip him at the post, which would be joyous.
Yeah, I think that's highly unlikely, but I think a good result for him will be coming second and beating the other mainstream parties.
No,
that's
definitely
possible.
It would. Yeah.
But I would look at for Jeremy Corbyn's victory, and also
he's going to win hands down.
Scotland.
And
If you voted for Jeremy in 2017 and 2019, you were in that election because you thought Labour had returned to its socialist roots. Well, look at your candidates. Look at who the Labour candidates are in your area. They're not socialists, and neither is their leader, despite the use of that term. These are the most, probably the most reactionary Labour leader we've had.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. And, if you were looking for the socialist candidate, in most cases, that will be your SNP candidate. It certainly is the case. Yeah, ours.
I couldn't ever have imagined growing up in the 80s under Thatcher or, the Callaghan. And I could never have imagined a Labour government accepting someone from across the chamber whose views are so repugnant. And I think we'll probably see more of that, maybe. I don't know. Parliament dissolves, of course, doesn't it, on Thursday? That's today. So there's no chance of that now. But it'll be interesting to see the dynamics of the results of this election. I think it's the Tories will be wiped out. It'll just be interesting to see how many independents can pip Labour at the post, and the more, the better.
Well, I'm sure as the campaign goes, next week we'll check in and nothing else happened during that week. We'll be able to find out more about what, say, Reform UK and other stuff. We won't talk about it now because I don't want to give them the oxygen.
East Lothian's got a Reform candidate. Yeah, we've got a Reform candidate here, but we don't have a Conservative candidate yet. So that'll be.
Then you do have a Tory candidate.
Oh, we do.
Anyway, I think we'll wrap this up, Janis, because otherwise we will go down that wormhole of Brexiteerness, which we just don't want. So, with that, I'll see you next week, because nothing will happen then either.
Thank you. Bye bye.